This episode brought to you by these awesome patrons and members.
What?
Wow! Free healthcare and teleporters? Well, it looks like Canadians really do live in the future. Let's warm up this CRT because it's time for Macintosh. Me and the guys from Retro Repair Roundup decided to clean up and soup up a vintage Mac to give away for Macintosh 2022. Rudy donated the machine and sent it over to me for a checkup and some vital upgrades. Let's check it out. The machine is a Macintosh SE FDHD. Judging by the serial number, it was manufactured in the 44th week of 1989. It has all the scuffs you might expect from a computer that's 32 years old, but there's no major damage. And it's also got the typical dirt and rub marks you might expect, but that's okay, it's nothing we can't take care of. It may be a little hard to see here, but the CRT does have some screen burn. It's not too bad, but it is noticeable. Let's give it a quick clean. I removed most of the grime using window cleaner and isopropyl alcohol. For tough spots, I very lightly clean the area with alcohol on a melamine sponge. You might also know those as magic erasers. Well, would you look at that? It cleaned up really well. Now it's time to take it apart and see what we got on the inside. The hard drive is an 80 megabyte model, but this is an upgrade because the original maximum was 40 megabytes. The power supply is the Sony model, and that's good news because that means it probably doesn't need to be recapped. The analog board has not been recapped, but judging by the way it looks, it probably doesn't need it. Enough yammering away. Let's get the machine stripped down to bare components. First, let's get the logic board out of the way. Now it's time to work on the analog components. After I've disconnected all the cables, I can get the analog board out of the way, and the power supply. Now it's time to yank the hard drive carrier. And then the floppy drive carrier. Last but not least, it's time to remove the CRT. Now on to sub-assemblies. Let's get the hard drive out of the carrier. And the floppy drive out of the floppy carrier. And now the arduous task of cleaning and lubricating the floppy drive. There are multiple videos on YouTube that go into the process of how to do this, so I won't detail that here. With the floppy drive back in the carrier, we clean the carrier off. And look at that, good as new. Now I reflow all of the heavy solder joints on the analog board. This old CRT has seen better days, so we'll replace it with one from my private stash. Before I put it all back together, I'm going to make sure the inside is clean. The floppy drive and carrier goes in first. Before I put the hard drive carrier back in, I have to reinstall an LED. The original was removed when the hard drive was upgraded. Now the hard drive carrier goes back in, but without the hard drive. We have future plans for that. Now it's time to install the new CRT. Now it's time to install the analog components. And now the digital components. Now let's button it all back up. Now all we gotta do is test it out. The moment of truth. Will it go bong or will it go bang? All cleaned up and ready to take the next step in its restoration for our Macintosh giveaway. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Remember to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay up to date on my latest adventures. You can support the museum by snagging some merch at jcm-1.com or by becoming a patron over on Patreon. Links in the description. Well, that's all for today's episode. While you're here, check out some of my other videos, and remember, one old Mac is all you need.